The fluorescent lights in the warehouse made everything look sickly and pale, like we were all working inside the belly of something dying. I'd been staring at the same shipping manifest for 20 minutes, pretending the numbers made sense, when Owen appeared beside my workstation with that look on his face, the one that said he was about to ask me something I didn't want to answer. "You planning to actually process that order, or you just meditating on it?" he asked. I blinked and refocused. The manifest swam back into clarity. "Just double-checking something." "Right." Owen wiped his hands on a rag that had probably been white sometime during the Reagan administration. "Because you've been staring at that same page since lunch, and it's almost quitting time." I glanced at the clock mounted above the loading bay doors. 4:27. Close enough. I saved the file and logged out of the system, feeling the weight of Owen's attention on me like a hand pressing down on my shoulder. "I'm fine," I said before he could ask. "Didn't say you weren't." "You were thinking it." Owen had known me since we were 16 and working summer jobs at the same gas station, back when the future seemed like something that happened to other people. Now we were both 32, and the future had happened whether we liked it or not. He knew my tells better than I did. We walked toward the exit together, past the rows of metal shelving stacked with boxes that all looked identical, past the foreman's office where Jenkins was doing paperwork with the kind of focus that suggested he was avoiding going home too. The late afternoon sun hit us as we stepped outside, turning everything orange and gold, and I felt something loosen in my chest that had been tight all day. "Nadine still giving you the silent treatment?" Owen asked as we reached the parking lot. "It's not silent treatment. She's just busy." Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. "Busy." Owen said the word like he was tasting something spoiled. "Right. Busy at 8 o'clock at night, busy on weekends, busy when you call her." "Drop it, Owen." "I'm just saying." "I know what you're saying, and I'm asking you to drop it." He held up his hands in surrender, but his eyes said he wasn't convinced. "All right. You need anything? You call me, even if it's 3 in the morning." "I'm not going to call you at 3 in the morning." "I know, but the offer stands." I climbed into my truck and watched Owen walk to his own vehicle, a beat-up tow truck with his company name painted on the side in letters that were starting to peel. He'd started his own business 2 years ago, and it was doing well enough that he'd hired 2 other guys to help with the overflow. I was proud of him, even though I'd never said it out loud. The drive home took 23 minutes on a good day. Longer if traffic was bad. Today it took 25, and I spent every one of them thinking about Nadine. It had started small, so small I'd convinced myself I was imagining it. Little behavioral shifts that didn't register as problems individually, but together formed a pattern I was starting to recognize. Her phone, for instance. Nadine used to leave it lying around the house like it was just another object, on the coffee table, the kitchen counter, the bathroom sink. I could pick it up and hand it to her when it rang, and she'd answer it right in front of me without a second thought. But over the last month, maybe 6 weeks, the phone had become something she guarded. It lived in her purse now, or in her pocket, and when it buzzed, she'd glance at it with an expression I couldn't quite read. Caution, maybe, or guilt. She'd changed her password, too. I'd noticed one morning when I'd tried to use her phone to check the weather because mine was charging in the bedroom. The old password, our wedding anniversary, didn't work anymore. When I asked her about it, she said she'd read an article about data security and decided to use something more complicated. "Can't be too careful these days," she'd said, not meeting my eyes. Then there were the errands. Nadine had always been social, always had plans with friends or commitments at the community center where she volunteered, but lately the errands had gotten later and vaguer. She'd leave at 8 in the evening, saying she needed to pick up groceries and come back at 10 with a single bag containing items we already had in the pantry. Once I'd found a receipt in her car, 2 cocktails at a bar called the Meridian, time-stamped 9:43 on a Tuesday night. When I asked her about it, she'd laughed and said she'd met up with her friend Jessica for a quick drink. "Why didn't you mention it?" I'd asked. I didn't think it was worth mentioning. But the thing that really got me, the thing that sat in my stomach like a stone, was the lingerie I'd found while looking for spare sheets in the back of our closet. Black lace, expensive, still in the shopping bag with the tags attached. I'd never seen Nadine wear it. I'd never even known she'd bought it. I'd put it back without saying anything, and every time I opened that closet, the bag seemed to glow in the dark like some kind of radioactive evidence. The house appeared as I turned onto our street, a 2-bedroom ranch with gray siding and a front yard that desperately needed mowing. Nadine's car wasn't in the driveway, which wasn't surprising. She'd been coming home later and later, always with a reason that sounded plausible but felt wrong. I parked and sat in the truck for a minute, staring at the front door and trying to decide if I wanted to go inside or just keep driving until I ran out of gas. The sun was dropping behind the neighbor's fence, painting everything in shades of amber and rust, and the evening felt heavy with something I couldn't name. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from Owen. "You talked to Graham yet?" Graham. Nadine's father. Retired police detective who still thought in terms of cases and evidence and reasonable doubt. I'd gone to see him 3 days ago because I was losing my grip on reality and needed someone who dealt in facts instead of feelings. I'd found him at his house on the north side of town, sitting on his back porch with a cup of coffee and a notebook. He looked older than I remembered, his hair more gray than brown now, his face lined with the kind of wrinkles that come from seeing too much of humanity's worst impulses. "Ethan," he'd said when he saw me, "you look terrible." "Thanks. That's exactly what I needed to hear." He gestured to the chair across from him. "Sit down. Tell me what's going on." So I had. I told him about the phone and the passwords and the late errands and the receipt and the lingerie I'd found but never seen her wear. I'd told him about the way Nadine looked at me lately, like I was furniture she was tired of seeing in the same spot. I'd told him I thought she was cheating on me, but I had no proof. Just a collection of small things that didn't add up to anything concrete. Graham had listened without interrupting, writing occasionally in his notebook with a pen that clicked every time he pressed it. When I finished, he'd set the pen down and looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "You think she's cheating," he'd said. It wasn't a question. "I don't know what I think. That's why I'm here." He'd tapped the notebook with one finger, considering. "If you ask questions, be ready for answers you might not want to hear. I'm asking anyway." Graham had nodded slowly. "All right, give me a few days. I'll look into it." That was 3 days ago, and I hadn't heard anything since. I'd texted him once, "Any updates?" and gotten back a single word. "Working." I climbed out of the truck and walked to the front door. The house felt wrong the moment I stepped inside. Not dramatically wrong, not haunted house wrong, just off in a way I couldn't articulate. Like someone had moved all the furniture 2 inches to the left and expected me not to notice. "Nadine?" I called out. No answer. I walked through the living room, past the couch where we used to sit together watching movies, past the bookshelf filled with books neither of us had read in years. The kitchen was empty, the sink still holding the coffee mug I'd left that morning. The bedroom was empty too, the bed made with military precision the way Nadine always made it. I pulled out my phone and called her. It rang 4 times and went to voicemail. I texted, "Where are you?" No response. I stood in the middle of the living room and felt the silence press down on me like a physical weight. The house had never felt this empty before, not even when Nadine was out of town visiting her sister. This was a different kind of empty. This was the kind of empty that suggested she'd left and wasn't planning to come back. My phone buzzed in my pocket, and I pulled it out expecting to see Nadine's name. Instead, it was Owen again. "Seriously, did you talk to Graham?" I typed back, "Working on it." The truth was, I was afraid of what Graham might find. As long as I didn't know for sure, I could still convince myself I was wrong. I could still pretend that Nadine was just going through something and we'd work it out eventually. But if Graham found proof, I shoved the thought away and walked to the bedroom. My coat was draped over the chair where I'd left it that morning, and my phone was still in the pocket where I'd tucked it before bed last night. I pulled it out and saw the notification light blinking. 3 missed calls, all from Graham. My stomach dropped. I stared at the phone for a long moment, feeling something cold settle in my chest. If Graham was calling me 3 times in a row, it meant he'd found something. It meant the answer I didn't want to hear was waiting on the other end of that call. I should have called him back right then. Should have ripped off the bandage and dealt with whatever he'd discovered. But I didn't. Instead, I put the phone back in my coat pocket, walked to the bed, and lay down on top of the covers. The logical part of my brain knew I was being a coward, knew that ignoring the problem wouldn't make it go away. But the rest of me, the part that was barely holding it together, decided that denial was a valid survival strategy for one more night. I closed my eyes. The phone buzzed again in the coat pocket. Once, twice, 3 times. I didn't move. Outside, a car door slammed. Then another. Then silence again. Nadine didn't disappear like a person, I thought. She disappeared like a secret someone was trying to keep. The phone buzzed a 4th time, and the sound was insistent, almost angry, like something trying to crawl out of the pocket and force me to pay attention. I still didn't move. The last thought I had before sleep dragged me under was that tomorrow everything would be different. Tomorrow I'd have to face whatever Graham had found. Tomorrow the pattern would finally make sense. But tonight, just for tonight, I could pretend everything was fine. The phone buzzed one more time, and the vibration felt like a small earthquake in the stillness of the room. The first thing I felt was pressure on my shoulder, someone shaking me hard enough that my teeth clicked together. The second thing I heard was Nadine's voice, high and panicked, cutting through the fog of sleep like a siren. "Give me your phone. Ethan, wake up. Give me your phone." I opened my eyes and saw her leaning over me, her face pale in the gray light filtering through the curtains. She was still dressed in the clothes she'd been wearing yesterday, which meant she'd either just gotten home or never gone to bed at all. Her hair was a mess, pulled back in a ponytail that had come half undone, and her eyes were red-rimmed and wild. "What?" I said, my voice thick with sleep. "Your phone." She grabbed my arm and pulled. "Please don't read the messages. Just give it to me." The panic in her voice cut through the last of the fog, and I sat up fast enough that spots danced across my vision. "What are you talking about?" "Please, Ethan, I'm begging you. Give me your phone and don't look at it." Something in her tone made my blood run cold. This wasn't normal panic. This was the kind of panic that comes from knowing you're about to be caught. "No," I said. The word came out harder than I'd intended, and I watched Nadine's face crumble. Not guilty tears, not shame, but pure panic at being exposed. I rolled out of bed and grabbed my coat from the chair. The phone was still in the pocket, heavier than it should have been, like it was made of lead instead of glass and plastic. I pulled it out and looked at the screen. 27 messages from Graham. I stared at the number, trying to process it. 27. Not 1 or 2 or even 5. 27 messages, all sent between midnight and 4 in the morning, all from Nadine's father. Nadine lunged for the phone, her hand closing around my wrist. "Don't! Please, Ethan. Just give it to me and we can talk about this." I pulled my arm back, and she stumbled forward, catching herself on the edge of the bed. "Talk about what?" "Just, please." I unlocked the phone and opened the message thread. The first message was a photo. Nadine sitting in a car I didn't recognize, leaning across the center console to kiss a man I'd never seen before. The timestamp said last Thursday, 9:15 in the evening. The location tag showed it was taken in the parking lot of a hotel called the Riverside Inn, 15 miles outside of town. My hands started shaking. I scrolled to the second message. Another photo. Nadine standing outside a different hotel, her arm around a different man, both of them laughing about something. The timestamp said Saturday afternoon. 2 days ago, I kept scrolling. 3, 5, 10, 15, 20. Each photo was worse than the last. Different men, different locations, different days. Some were grainy, clearly taken from a distance with a telephoto lens. Others were sharp and clear, like Graham had been standing right next to them. The timestamps created a timeline that went back weeks, maybe months, and every single photo showed Nadine with someone who wasn't me. At the bottom of the thread, after all the photos, Graham had written a single message. "I'm sorry, Ethan. I tried talking to her first. She wouldn't listen. You deserved to know." I looked up at Nadine. She was crying now, tears streaming down her face, but she wasn't making any sound, just standing there with her hand pressed to her mouth like she was trying to hold something inside that was desperate to get out. "How long?" I asked. My voice sounded strange, too calm, like it was coming from someone else. "It's not what it looks like." "How long, Nadine?" "I can explain." "How long?" She flinched. "A few months. Maybe longer. I don't know." Something inside me snapped. Not broke, snapped, like a rubber band pulled too tight. I grabbed the chair she'd been sitting in last night and threw it at the window. The sound was enormous. Glass exploded outward in a spray that caught the early morning light and turned it into 1,000 tiny suns. The chair bounced off the lawn and landed in the flower bed Nadine had planted last spring, crushing the daisies she'd been so proud of. Nadine screamed and ran for the door. I wasn't done. I grabbed the lamp off the nightstand and hurled it at the wall. The bulb shattered, and the base left a dent in the drywall the size of my fist. I kicked the dresser, and the drawers spilled open, vomiting clothes onto the floor in a cascade of colors that looked obscene in the pale light. I grabbed the edge of the mattress and flipped it halfway off the bed frame, and it sagged there like something dying. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely control them. My vision had gone red at the edges, and there was a sound in my ears like rushing water. I picked up my phone from where I'd dropped it and stared at the photos again, cycling through them one by one, trying to make sense of something that would never make sense. Nadine was gone. I heard the front door slam, then the sound of her car starting, then the squeal of tires as she peeled out of the driveway like she was being chased by something with teeth. I stood in the wreckage of the bedroom, breathing hard, staring at the broken window and the morning light spilling through it. My phone rang in my hand. Graham. I answered. "You saw them," he said. His voice was flat, tired, the voice of a man who'd delivered bad news too many times to count. "Yeah." "I'm sorry, son." "How long have you known?" 5 days. I wanted to be sure before I said anything. Wanted to gather enough evidence that there'd be no room for doubt. "How did you—" I stopped, not sure I wanted to know. "Old habits," Graham said. "A friend of mine tipped me off that he'd seen Nadine with someone at a restaurant downtown. Said it looked cozy. I followed up. Started keeping an eye on her, taking photos when I could. Then I saw the pattern." "What pattern?" 3 different guys, Ethan. Maybe more. I stopped counting after I had enough to prove it wasn't a one-time thing." I sat down on the edge of the bed, or what was left of it. The room looked like a bomb had gone off. Broken glass on the floor, clothes everywhere, furniture scarred and dented. It looked like my insides felt. "Did you try to talk to her?" I asked. 4 times. She hung up on me twice, ignored me once, and the 4th time she told me to mind my own business. I even showed up at her gym one morning. She saw me and walked right back out to her car. "She knew you were following her." "Yeah, but she didn't know I had proof until now." I closed my eyes and tried to breathe. The air felt too thick, like I was trying to inhale water instead of oxygen. "Ethan," Graham said, "listen to me. Don't do anything stupid." "Like what?" "Like anything that gets you arrested. I know you're angry. You have every right to be angry. But the second you cross a line, the second you put your hands on someone or damage someone's property or do anything that could be construed as threatening, you become the bad guy. That's how the system works. It doesn't matter that you're the victim. Thanks for the warning. I'm serious. You call me if you need anything, day or night, but you keep your head on straight, understand?" "I understand." I hung up. The house was silent except for the sound of my own breathing and the faint whistle of wind through the broken window. I looked at the phone again, scrolling through the photos one more time, studying each one like I was looking for something I'd missed. But there was nothing to miss. The evidence was clear. Nadine had been cheating on me, not once but repeatedly, with multiple men, over a period of weeks or months. The 27 messages weren't just proof. They were a timeline, a map, a case file that Graham had built the way he'd built cases when he was still on the force, methodical and thorough and impossible to refute. I should have felt something more than anger. Sadness, maybe. Grief for the marriage we'd had, or thought we'd had. But all I felt was a cold, controlled rage that made my hands steady and my thoughts clear. By evening, I was driving. I didn't have a plan exactly, just a vague idea that I needed to find Nadine and force her to explain herself, to look me in the eye and tell me why she'd done this, why I wasn't enough, why she'd chosen to destroy everything we'd built instead of just leaving. I called Ashley first. Ashley was Nadine's closest friend, the one she'd known since college, the one who knew all her secrets, or most of them anyway. "Hey, Ethan," Ashley said when she answered. Her voice was careful, guarded, which told me she already knew. "Where is she?" "Who?" "Don't play dumb, Ashley. Where's Nadine?" "I don't know what you're—" "She's with you, isn't she?" There was a long pause. Then, "She's not here." "You're lying." "I'm not, I swear." "If you're covering for her—" "I'm not, Ethan. She's not here. I don't know where she is." The thing was, I believed her. Ashley was a terrible liar, always had been, and there was something in her voice that sounded genuine. "If she calls you," I said, "tell her I want to talk." "Ethan." I hung up. Next I tried Jessica, another friend from Nadine's inner circle. She didn't answer. I left a message. "I know you know where she is. Tell her to call me." Then I tried Becca. Same result. Straight to voicemail. I was running out of options, so I did something desperate. I drove to Ashley's apartment building and parked across the street. Her place was on the 3rd floor, and I could see her window from where I sat. The lights were on, and I could make out shadows moving behind the blinds. I waited. 10 minutes, 20, 30. Then I saw it. Nadine's car, parked in the lot behind the building, tucked into a spot near the dumpsters like she thought distance would make her invisible. So Ashley had lied. I got out of the truck and walked to the building. I didn't knock on Ashley's door. Instead, I went back to my truck, pulled out one of the printed photos Graham had sent me, the one of Nadine kissing the first guy in the hotel parking lot, and slipped it under the windshield wiper of her car. Then I got back in my truck and waited. 5 minutes later, the door to the building opened and Ashley came out, walking fast. She went straight to Nadine's car, saw the photo, and froze. I watched her pull it out from under the wiper and stare at it, her face pale even from a distance. Then she looked around, scanning the parking lot, and I knew she was looking for me. I started my truck and drove away. I wasn't hunting my wife, I realized as I turned onto the main road. I was hunting the truth, hunting the version of our life together that had been real, not the lie she'd been living. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. I opened it. It was a photo of Nadine, taken maybe 10 minutes ago, standing at Ashley's window on the 3rd floor, staring down at her car with an expression I couldn't quite read. I stared at the photo for a long time, trying to figure out who'd sent it. Graham, maybe. Or someone else Nadine had lied to. Someone who wanted me to know the truth. I saved the photo and kept driving. Nadine didn't come home that night, or the next day, or the day after that. The house felt wrong without her, like a body missing its vital organs. I'd covered the broken window with a sheet of plastic and duct tape, but it didn't stop the cold from seeping in. The furniture I'd destroyed sat where it had fallen, the chair still in the flower bed, the lamp in pieces on the bedroom floor, the mattress half off the bed frame like a tongue hanging out of a mouth. I should have cleaned it up, should have called someone to fix the window, should have put the clothes back in the dresser, should have done something to make the house feel less like a crime scene. But I couldn't bring myself to move. Every time I looked at the destruction, I felt a grim satisfaction, like the physical evidence of my rage was the only honest thing left in my life. I called in sick to work. Owen texted me 3 times asking if I was okay, and I ignored him. Graham called once, and I let it go to voicemail. He left a message. Just checking in, call me when you're ready to talk. I wasn't ready to talk. I spent the first day sitting on the couch, staring at my phone, waiting for Nadine to text or call or do anything that would give me an excuse to respond. But there was nothing. Just silence that felt louder than any argument we'd ever had. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the photos. Nadine with the first guy, laughing. Nadine with the second guy, holding hands. Nadine with the third guy, kissing him like she meant it. Over and over, an endless loop that played on the backs of my eyelids like a movie I couldn't pause. On the second day, the spiral got worse. I started replaying every moment of our marriage, looking for the signs I'd missed. The time she'd come home late from a work event and her breath smelled like wine and something else, something I couldn't identify. The weekend she'd said she was going to visit her sister, but her sister had called the house looking for her. The way she'd started working out more, buying new clothes, wearing perfume I'd never smelled before. How had I missed it? How had I been so blind? By noon, I couldn't take the silence anymore. I grabbed my keys and drove to Owen's garage. He was under a truck when I walked in, his legs sticking out from beneath the chassis, the sound of metal on metal echoing through the shop. I kicked his boot, and he rolled out on a creeper, squinting up at me. "You look like hell," he said. "Yeah, I'm getting that a lot." He sat up, wiping his hands on a rag that left more grease than it removed. "You finally ready to talk about it?" I handed him my phone. "Look at these." Owen took the phone and started scrolling through the photos. I watched his expression change from confusion to anger to something that looked like pity. When he finished, he handed the phone back and stood up. "Jesus, Ethan." "Yeah." "Who are these guys?" "I don't know." Graham found them, been following her, taking photos, building a case. Owen ran a hand through his hair, leaving a streak of grease across his forehead. "What are you going to do?" "I want revenge." The words came out before I'd really thought about them, but the second I said them, I knew they were true. I didn't want to forgive Nadine. I didn't want to work things out. I wanted her to feel even a fraction of what I was feeling. Owen shook his head. "That's a bad idea." "Why?" "Because revenge is how people end up in jail, Ethan, or worse. I'm not going to do anything illegal. You say that now, but anger makes people stupid. Trust me, I've seen it happen. I'm not going to let her get away with this, Owen." "I'm not saying you should. I'm saying be smart about it. Hire a lawyer, file for divorce. Take her for everything she's got, but don't go off half-cocked and do something you'll regret." I wanted to argue, but I knew he was right. The problem was, being right didn't make the anger go away. It just made it sit there in my chest, heavy and hot, waiting for an excuse to explode. "Where is she?" Owen asked. "I don't know. I've been looking." "Have you tried her usual spots?" I shook my head. "I called some friends. They're all covering for her." "What about Graham? He's a detective. Can't he find her?" "He said she's gone dark. Not answering calls, not showing up anywhere he can track." Owen leaned against the truck, considering. "So she knows you're looking for her." "Yeah. Which means she's probably staying somewhere you wouldn't think to check? A hotel, maybe? Or with someone you don't know." I thought about that. Nadine had a lot of friends, but most of them I at least knew by name. The idea that she might have a whole other circle of people I'd never met made my stomach turn. "I need to find her," I said. "Why? So you can yell at her?" Make a scene? That's not going to make you feel better, Ethan? Maybe not, but it'll make her feel worse. Owen stared at me for a long moment, and I could see him weighing whether to keep arguing or just let me make my own mistakes. Finally, he sighed. All right. But when this blows up in your face, don't say I didn't warn you. I left the garage and drove around town, checking every place I could think of. The gym where Nadine had a membership, the coffee shop where she liked to work on her laptop, the park where she went jogging, the library, the community center. Nothing. It was like she'd vanished. I called Graham. I still don't know where she is, he said before I could even ask. I've been checking her usual spots, but she's not showing up. Either she's staying with someone I don't know, or she's holed up somewhere waiting for this to blow over. It's not going to blow over. I know, but she doesn't know that yet. Can't you track her phone or something? Not without a warrant. And even if I could, I'm retired, Ethan. I can't just access that kind of information anymore. I hung up and drove home, feeling the weight of futility settle over me like a blanket. Nadine had gone underground, and I had no way to find her short of hiring a private investigator or staking out every friend's house in town. When I pulled into the driveway, I saw Darla standing on her porch 2 houses down. She was watching me with the kind of interest people reserve for car accidents and house fires. Her arms crossed over her chest, a smirk on her face that made me want to do something I'd regret. Everything okay over there, Ethan? She called out. Fine. I heard some noise the other night. Just wanted to make sure nobody was hurt. Nobody's hurt. That's good, because, people talk, and it'd be a shame if something happened and nobody knew about it. I stared at her, trying to figure out if she was genuinely concerned or just fishing for gossip. From the look on her face, I was pretty sure it was the latter. Thanks for your concern, I said, my voice flat. Anytime, neighbor. I went inside and stood in the living room, staring at the plastic-covered window and the broken furniture and feeling like I was living in the aftermath of a natural disaster. Nadine wasn't just hiding, I realized. She was letting me look, letting me drive around town like a maniac while she stayed 2 steps ahead, making me look crazier with every move I made. She was controlling the narrative, and I was falling right into her trap. I made a decision then, standing in the wreckage of my living room with the evening light filtering through the plastic. I wasn't going to beg, I wasn't going to chase her around town like some pathetic ex. I was going to collect leverage, build my own case. And when the time was right, I was going to make sure everyone knew exactly what she'd done. My phone buzzed. A text from Owen. Just saw Nadine's car, parked outside that bar on 5th Street, the one with the neon sign. You know it? I grabbed my keys and headed for the door. The bar was called The Anchor, and it looked exactly like the kind of place people went when they wanted to pretend they were more interesting than they actually were. Neon signs in the window advertised craft beers I'd never heard of, and through the glass I could see exposed brick walls and Edison bulbs hanging from the ceiling like something out of a magazine spread. I parked across the street and watched the entrance for 20 minutes before I saw her. Nadine came out alone, clutching her phone and looking around like she expected someone to jump out at her. She was wearing clothes I didn't recognize, a black dress that was too nice for a Tuesday night, heels that made her walk differently. She looked like a stranger. I got out of my truck and started across the street. She saw me halfway across and froze. Ethan, she said, what are you doing here? Looking for you. You need to leave. No. She glanced back at the bar, and I could see the calculation in her eyes. She was weighing her options, trying to figure out if she should run or stand her ground. We need to talk, I said. Not here. Then where? I don't know. Somewhere private. Fine, my truck. She hesitated, then nodded. We walked back across the street in silence, and I unlocked the passenger door. She climbed in, and I got in on the driver's side. For a moment we just sat there, staring through the windshield at the bar, neither of us saying anything. I'm sorry, she said finally. For what? For cheating? Or for getting caught? For all of it. I turned to look at her. How many? What? How many men, Nadine? Graham found 3 in his photos. Were there more? She looked down at her hands, twisting her wedding ring around her finger. Does it matter? Yeah, it matters. 4, maybe 5. I don't remember exactly. I laughed, and it came out wrong, too sharp, too bitter. You don't remember. That's great. That's just perfect. It's not what you think. Then what is it? She looked up at me, and I saw tears in her eyes. But they looked fake, performative, like she was trying to manipulate me into feeling sorry for her. I was lonely, she said. You were always working, always tired, always distant. I felt like I was living with a roommate, not a husband. So you decided to sleep with half the town? It wasn't like that. Then what was it like? She didn't answer, just sat there crying those fake tears, waiting for me to comfort her the way I always had. But I wasn't going to do it this time. I was done being the one who apologized, who smoothed things over, who pretended everything was fine when it clearly wasn't. "Get out," I said. "Ethan, get out of my truck, Nadine." She opened the door and climbed out, stumbling slightly in those ridiculous heels. I watched her walk back toward the bar, and then I drove away. I didn't go home. Instead, I drove to Graham's house and found him in his usual spot on the back porch, nursing a beer and staring at his notebook. "She still doesn't want to be found," I said. Graham looked up. "You saw her?" "Yeah, at that bar on 5th, the Anchor." "What happened?" "She apologized. Said she was lonely. Said I was distant. Made it sound like this was somehow my fault." Graham set his beer down and leaned back in his chair. "You know what I've learned in 30 years of police work? People will say anything to avoid taking responsibility, especially when they're caught. She doesn't think she did anything wrong. Of course she doesn't. In her mind, she's the victim. You're the bad guy for finding out." I sat down in the chair across from him, suddenly exhausted. "I don't know what to do, Graham. You file for divorce, you take half of everything, you move on. I can't." "Why not?" "Because she doesn't get to just walk away from this. She doesn't get to destroy our marriage and then act like I'm the problem." Graham studied me for a long moment. "You want revenge?" "Yeah." "Be careful, Ethan. Revenge has a way of destroying the person seeking it just as much as the person it's aimed at." "I don't care. You say that now, but you will." I left Graham's house and spent the next day doing something I knew was pathetic, but couldn't stop myself from doing. I started visiting all of Nadine's friends. First stop, Ashley's apartment. I knocked on the door, and she opened it with a look of resignation on her face. "Ethan," she said, "what do you want?" "I want to know where Nadine is." "I don't know." "You're lying." "I'm not. She stayed here for one night, and then she left. I don't know where she went." "Did she say anything? Give you any clue where she might go?" Ashley hesitated. She mentioned something about staying with Kellen for a while. The name hit me like a punch to the gut. "Who's Kellen?" I probably shouldn't have said that. "Too late. Who is he?" She sighed. "Kellen Rourke. He's one of the guys she's been seeing. He works at the Anchor." "Where does he live?" "I don't know. And even if I did, I wouldn't tell you. You need to let this go, Ethan." I walked away without another word. Next stop, Jessica's house. She didn't even open the door, just yelled through it that Nadine wasn't there and I needed to leave. Third stop, Becca's condo. She opened the door, took one look at me, and said, "You look crazy, Ethan. You know that?" "Where is she?" "I don't know, and I wouldn't tell you if I did. You need to calm down." "I am calm." "No, you're not. You're standing on my porch at 7 in the morning, looking like you haven't slept in days. That's not calm. That's unhinged." She shut the door in my face. I spent the rest of the day driving around, checking hotels, looking for Nadine's car, coming up empty every time. By evening, I was exhausted and angry and starting to feel like maybe everyone was right. Maybe I was unhinged. My phone rang. Graham. "Your name's circulating," he said. "What does that mean?" "It means Nadine's friends are talking. They're saying you're harassing them, showing up at their houses, acting threatening, words getting around that you're unstable." "I'm not unstable. I'm just trying to find my wife." "I know, but that's not how it looks. You need to back off, Ethan. Let me handle this." "You said you couldn't find her." "I can't, but I'm still trying, and I'm doing it without making you look like a stalker." I hung up. My phone buzzed immediately. A text from Darla. "Everyone knows what you did last night. Smile for the cameras." I stared at the message, feeling the anger rise in my chest like a tide coming in. Darla had been watching me, probably filming me, spreading gossip about me to anyone who would listen. She'd picked Nadine's side without knowing any of the facts, and now she was working overtime to make me look like the villain. I drove home and sat in the driveway for a long time, staring at my house and wondering how everything had fallen apart so fast. The pattern was clear now. Nadine wasn't just hiding, she was building a case against me, using her friends and neighbors to paint a picture of a dangerous, unstable husband, and I was playing right into her hands. I needed to be smarter, I needed to stop reacting and start planning. But first, I needed to deal with Darla. I started drinking on the third night after Nadine left. Not because I wanted to, not because I thought it would help, but because the silence in the house was unbearable, and the whiskey was the only thing that made it tolerable. I sat on the couch with the bottle between my knees, staring at the plastic-covered window and thinking about all the ways I'd failed. Failed to see the signs, failed to keep Nadine happy, failed to be the kind of man she wanted to stay with. The whiskey made the thoughts softer, easier to manage. It turned the sharp edges of my anger into something dull and heavy that settled in my stomach like a stone. By midnight, I'd finished half the bottle and was starting to feel like maybe everything would be okay. Maybe I'd wake up tomorrow and Nadine would be home and we'd figure out a way to fix this. But then I heard Darla's voice outside. She was on her porch with 2 other women from the neighborhood, and they were talking loud enough that I could hear every word through the plastic-covered window. Heard he completely lost it the other night. Trashed his own house. Poor Nadine. She must be terrified. Sounds like he's dangerous. I stood up, swaying slightly, and walked to the window. Darla saw me and waved, that fake friendly smile on her face. "Evening, Ethan," she called out. "How you holding up?" I didn't answer. She laughed. "Don't worry, honey. I'm sure Nadine will come to her senses eventually. Maybe if you give her some space." The other women laughed too, and the sound was like fingernails on a chalkboard. I felt something snap inside me. Not the same kind of snap as when I destroyed the bedroom. This was colder, more calculated. This was the kind of snap that comes from realizing you're tired of being the victim, tired of being laughed at, tired of letting other people control the narrative. The next night, Darla was at it again. Same porch, same 2 women, same loud conversation designed to make sure I could hear every word. "Heard he's been driving around town, following her." "That's stalker behavior." "Someone should call the police." I poured another whiskey and stood at my window, watching them. Darla caught my eye and smiled, raising her own glass in a mock toast. That was when I lost it. I set down my whiskey, walked outside, and picked up a rock from my driveway. It was about the size of a baseball, smooth and heavy in my hand. Darla saw me and stopped mid-sentence. "Ethan," she said, "what are you doing?" I didn't answer. I just threw the rock. It hit her living room window dead center, and the glass exploded inward with a sound like a small bomb going off. The women on the porch screamed. Darla jumped to her feet, pointing at me, yelling something I couldn't hear over the ringing in my ears. I walked back inside and closed my door. 20 minutes later, the police arrived. 2 cruisers, 4 officers. One of them was older, with gray hair, and the kind of face that had seen every stupid thing humanity had to offer. He knocked on my door, and I opened it. "Ethan Holt?" he asked. "Yeah." "I'm Officer Patterson. We got a call about vandalism. You want to tell me what happened?" I threw a rock through my neighbor's window. He blinked, clearly not expecting me to just admit it. "Why'd you do that?" "She was harassing me." "How?" "She's been talking about me, spreading gossip, making fun of me every night for the past week." "That's not illegal, Mr. Holt." "Yeah, well, apparently throwing rocks is." Patterson sighed. "All right, here's what's going to happen. You're going to pay for that window, and if I get called out here again for anything involving you and your neighbor, somebody's going to jail. Are we clear?" "Crystal." He handed me a slip of paper with a case number on it. "Stay away from her. Don't talk to her, don't look at her, don't even think about her. Got it?" "Got it." The officers left, and I went back inside. My phone was already ringing. Owen. "You threw a rock through your neighbor's window," he said. "She had it coming." "Ethan, listen to yourself. You sound insane." "I'm not insane. I'm just done being everyone's punching bag." "That's not how the world sees it, man. The world sees a guy who's losing his mind because his wife left him. She didn't leave me. She cheated on me. Same difference to people who don't know the whole story." I hung up on him. My phone buzzed immediately. A text from Nadine. "If you come near my job, I'll tell them you scared me." I stared at the message for a long time, feeling the anger build again. She was threatening me now, trying to control me with fear of consequences. But I was past caring about consequences. I typed back, "Too late." Then I set my alarm for 6 a.m. and went to bed. Nadine worked at a place called Horizon Insurance, a mid-sized company that occupied the 3rd floor of a glass building downtown. I'd been there before for the annual Christmas party and a few company picnics, so I knew exactly where her desk was. I waited in the parking lot until I saw her car pull in. She parked in her usual spot near the entrance and walked inside, clutching her coffee and her laptop bag, completely unaware that I was watching. I gave her 5 minutes to get settled, then I followed her in. The lobby was all marble floors and potted plants, and a receptionist who looked up as I entered. She started to ask if I needed help, but something in my expression made her stop mid-sentence. I walked past her to the elevator and hit the button for the 3rd floor. The doors opened onto an open-plan office space with glass walls and too many plants and the hum of people pretending to work. I saw Nadine immediately. She was at her desk near the back, typing something on her computer, her face illuminated by the blue glow of the screen. I walked straight to her desk and dropped a folder on her keyboard. She looked up, saw me, and her face went pale. "What are you doing here?" she whispered. "I thought you might want to explain these," I said, loud enough that people started looking up from their desks. Nadine grabbed the folder and tried to shove it into a drawer, but I pulled it back out and opened it. Inside were printed copies of all 27 photos Graham had sent me, organized chronologically, each one more damning than the last. "Who's Kellen Rourke?" I asked, holding up the first photo. "And who's this guy? And this one?" People were standing now. Someone pulled out their phone and started recording. "Ethan, stop," Nadine said. Her voice was shaking. "You're embarrassing yourself." "I'm embarrassing myself?" I laughed. "You cheated on me with at least 4 different guys, Nadine. Probably more. And you think I'm the one embarrassing myself?" A man in a suit appeared. Her manager, from the nameplate on his desk. "Sir, you need to leave." "I'll leave when I'm done. If you don't leave right now, I'm calling security." "Go ahead, call them. Maybe they'll want to see these photos too." Nadine stood up, tears streaming down her face, and grabbed my arm. "Please, Ethan, let's go outside." I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw something I'd never seen before. Not guilt, not shame, just fear that her carefully constructed lie was falling apart in front of everyone who mattered. "Fine," I said. "Let's go outside." We walked through the office in silence, and I could feel everyone's eyes on us. Someone whispered something, and someone else laughed nervously. By the time we reached the elevator, my phone was buzzing with texts from Owen and Graham, but I ignored them. The parking lot was cold and bright, and Nadine wrapped her arms around herself like she was trying to hold herself together. "I'm sorry," she said. "You keep saying that. What are you sorry for?" "For hurting you, for lying, for all of it." "Are you sorry you did it, or sorry you got caught?" She didn't answer, which was an answer in itself. "I was bored, Ethan," she said finally. "I know that's not an excuse, but it's the truth. I felt suffocated in that marriage. I felt like I was disappearing." "So you cheated." "I made a mistake. 4 times, at least. I know it was wrong. But I'm begging you, give me a chance to make this right." "There's nothing to make right, Nadine. It's over." A car pulled into the lot, and I recognized it immediately. Kellen's silver sedan, the one that had been towed from the same parking lot a few days ago. He must have gotten it back. He climbed out and saw me, and his face twisted into something ugly. "What the hell are you doing here?" he said. "Talking to my wife. She doesn't want to talk to you." "Funny, because she just spent 5 minutes apologizing to me." Kellen walked toward us, all swagger and manufactured confidence. He was taller than me, broader in the shoulders, with the kind of face that made me want to punch it just on principle. "You need to leave," he said. "Or what?" He shoved my shoulder. Not hard, but hard enough to make a point. "Or I'll make you leave." Security was coming out of the building now. 2 guys in uniform, but I didn't care. I slapped Kellen across the face, hard enough that the sound echoed across the parking lot. He stumbled back, more shocked than hurt, his hand flying to his cheek. "You just assaulted me," he said. "That's assault. I'm pressing charges." "Go ahead," I said. "I'll see you in court." Security reached us, but I held up my hands. "I'm leaving. No problem." I pulled out my phone and made a call. Owen answered on the first ring. "It's time," I said. "Silver sedan. Expired registration, same spot as last time." "You sure about this?" "Positive." I hung up and turned to Kellen. "You might want to move your car. There's a tow truck coming." "What are you talking about?" "Expired tags. It's illegal to park on private property with expired registration. City contract." Kellen's face went red. "You can't do that." "Watch me." 10 minutes later, Owen's tow truck pulled into the lot. Kellen ran toward it, screaming, but the driver just shrugged and started hooking up the car. "City contract," the driver said. "Tags are 3 months expired. You can pick it up at the impound lot tomorrow. Cash only." Kellen turned to me, his face purple with rage. "I'm going to destroy you." "Get in line." I walked back to my truck, leaving Nadine sobbing in the parking lot and Kellen screaming at the tow truck driver. Behind me, I could hear security calling the police, and I knew I'd probably get a visit later. But I didn't care. I'd crossed a line. I knew it. But the thing was, I didn't regret it. because for the first time since I'd seen those 27 photos, I felt like I had some control back. Nadine screamed something after me, but I didn't turn around. I just got in my truck and drove away, watching them all shrink in my rearview mirror. 4 days later, Nadine came home, not to stay, to collect her things. I was in the living room when I heard her car pull into the driveway. I'd been expecting this moment, rehearsing what I'd say, how I'd act, but now that it was here, I found I had nothing prepared. Just a cold, hollow feeling where my anger used to be. She opened the door slowly, like she expected me to be waiting with a baseball bat. "I'm just here for my stuff," she said. "Take it." She walked to the bedroom, and I listened to the sounds of her packing. Drawers opening, hangers scraping, the rustle of clothes being folded and shoved into suitcases. She moved quickly, efficiently, like she'd been planning this for a while. When she came back out, she was carrying 2 large suitcases and a garbage bag full of clothes. She set them down by the door and looked at me. "I'm sorry," she said. "What are you sorry for this time?" "For everything, for hurting you, for making you into someone you're not." "Making me into someone I'm not? That's rich. I'm exactly who I've always been, Nadine. You're the one who changed." "That's not fair." "Fair?" I laughed. "You want to talk about fair? You cheated on me with multiple men over the course of months, maybe years. You lied to my face every single day. You made me feel crazy for suspecting something was wrong. And now you want to talk about fair?" She started crying. Real tears this time, not the performative kind. "I know I messed up. I know I hurt you, but I'm begging you, Ethan. Give me one more chance. We can fix this." "No, we can't." "Why not?" "Because you don't want to fix it. You want me to forget it. You want to rewrite history so you're the victim and I'm the bad guy who couldn't forgive you. But that's not how this works." "I never loved them," she said. "I only loved you." "Then why?" "Because I was bored," she shouted. "Because you worked all the time and never wanted to go anywhere or do anything, and I felt like I was dying inside that marriage." "So you made me the villain in your story." "I didn't." "Yes, you did. You cheated. You lied. And then, when I found out, you tried to make it seem like I was the problem. Like I was crazy for being angry. Like I was the one who destroyed our marriage." She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "What do you want from me?" "I want you gone. And I want you to know that everything you built here, everything you thought you had, is gone too." She stared at me. "What does that mean?" "It means the lease is in my name, the utilities are in my name, the car insurance is in my name, I've already canceled the credit cards we shared and had the mail forwarded to my address, the joint bank account is empty. Everything you took for granted, it's gone." Her face went pale. "You can't do that." "I just did. Legally. All of it." "Ethan. Get out." A car horn honked outside. Kellen, waiting at the curb in his rental car, looking impatient. Nadine picked up her suitcases and walked to the door. She stopped there, looking back at me one last time. "I hope you're happy," she said. "I'm not, but I will be." She walked out, and I listened to her load her things into Kellen's car. I heard them talking, though I couldn't make out the words. Then I heard Graham's voice. He'd arrived, probably because Nadine had called him in a panic. I walked to the window and watched. Graham was trying to mediate, his hands up in a calming gesture, but Nadine was crying, and Kellen was yelling, and the whole scene looked like something from a bad reality show. Then Kellen saw me in the window and walked toward the house. I met him outside. "You got something to say to me?" he asked. "Yeah, stay away from my wife." "Your wife? She's not your wife anymore, buddy. She made her choice." "That's funny, because last I checked, we're still legally married." He stepped closer. "You're pathetic. Chasing her around, making scenes, throwing rocks at people's houses. No wonder she left you." I didn't say anything, just pulled a folder from my jacket, the same folder Graham had given me, plus some additional material he'd compiled over the last few days. "Recognize these?" I asked, opening the folder. Kellen's smug smile disappeared. Inside were photos of him with other women, married women, from what Graham had been able to determine. Women whose husbands probably had no idea their wives were spending time with Kellen Rourke. "I've got digital copies too," I said, "and addresses, husbands' names, employers. I'm thinking about sending them out. What do you think?" "You wouldn't." "Try me." Kellen lunged for the folder. I stepped back, and he stumbled forward. Nadine screamed. Graham shouted something. Kellen grabbed for the folder again, and we collided. He shoved me hard, and I shoved back. He stumbled backward into the street just as a car turned onto our block, honking and swerving to avoid him. "Ethan, stop!" Graham yelled, but I wasn't stopping. Not yet. I looked at Nadine, standing on the curb with mascara running down her face, and I said the thing I'd been holding in for days. You didn't just cheat. You turned my life into a joke. You made me look like a fool in front of everyone who matters. So I made sure nobody laughs at me anymore. Kellen was yelling something about assault and lawyers, but I wasn't listening. I walked to his rental car and pulled a small bottle from my pocket. Shrimp paste, the kind fishermen use for bait. The smell was overwhelming, even with the cap on. "What are you doing?" Kellen shouted. I popped the hood of his car, found the cabin air intake, and poured the entire bottle inside. Then I closed the hood and walked away. "You're insane," Kellen screamed. Behind me, I could hear Nadine sobbing, Kellen cursing, Graham trying to calm everyone down. Neighbors were coming out onto their porches, phones in hand, recording everything. I got in my truck and drove away. I didn't look back. Didn't check my rearview mirror to see them scrambling. Didn't care what happened next. Because for the first time since this nightmare started, I felt like I'd won something. Not my marriage. That was gone, burned to the ground by Nadine's lies and my rage. But my dignity? My self-respect. The knowledge that I hadn't just rolled over and accepted being the victim. I'd fought back. And even if it meant I'd become someone I didn't recognize, even if it meant I'd crossed lines I couldn't uncross, at least I'd fought. The phone rang. Graham. I didn't answer. I just drove, watching the town disappear in my rearview mirror, and felt nothing at all.